Maintaining a car like that and allow it to be driven 100, 200,000 more miles is going to make a better gift to the planet than trashing it and buying a Tesla. Today I'm going to present you my new daily driver, this 1990 Volvo 240 station wagon. But more importantly, we're going to discuss today what it is to drive an older car every day and try to answer two questions. The first one, should you buy something like this instead of a newer car, a Tesla or whatever? And the second question, why is the answer to the first question yes? So I don't want to spend too much time on the specs and the performance of the car. Obviously this is not a sports car, and to me it falls more into the pleasure of driving and the experience you have when driving such a car, even in an everyday context. But I just want to put in perspective some of the specs of that car to compare it to cars that are maybe more modern. A Volvo 240 is supposed to be between 110 and 115 horsepower. This is basically just 15 more horsepower than a Toyota Prius C. Then, in terms of dimensions and weight, it weighs about 3,000 pounds, which is basically the weight of a Chevy Malibu, just to give a reference. Obviously, I will show you the inside. This car can sit 7 people in it. That was a big family car. A 7-seater today is some of the biggest SUVs, like the Cadillac Escalade or the Chevy Suburban. So what do you get with a car like that? Obviously it will be a little more noisy. You know, there's going to be a lot of squeaking. Sometimes it's going to be the seat belt, sometimes it's going to be some mechanical parts or anything. I want to say at the end of the day, is it much worse than an electric car? And specifically Teslas, for instance, where we know they are not perfectly well built, and so we hear a lot of those squeaky noise, a lot of the seats rubbing together. Next to that, this car is obviously much more mechanical, and although it's not needed, having some basics in mechanic may help you greatly with owning a car like that. And the biggest reason to that is that those cars being still very, very analog, you can totally fix them on the side of the road most of the time. Those cars are not complicated, it's not full of electronics, it's just what it is. It's a car with a small and simple engine, which makes it so if you break down on the side of the road, there are greater chances that you may fix it than with any electric car, where basically when one thing shuts off, everything shut off. And finally, the car is just so much smaller. I mean, if you compare it to a family car today, whether it's a minivan or whether it's an SUV, this car can hold as many people in it, but you can see it, how small it is. I'm not saying that it's maybe as great as a comfort as a big Chevy Tahoe or Lincoln Navigator. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, when you put everything into perspective, this car is, I mean, mine is in pretty good shape. I would say that the value is probably between $7,000 and $10,000. Those huge SUVs are more than $60,000. So I'm just saying, sometimes, you know, if you have not a great use of the car for a lot of luggage and everything, but you still have 2, 3 or even 4 kids, that car is not only much cooler than any SUV, but you can still do the trick. It works perfectly. So now you may tell me, what is it to drive? So let's get on the driver's seat. Alright, so here we are at the wheel of it. I do have a manual gearbox, which is maybe not the most popular here in the US. Now, if you drive one that is automatic, which most of them in the US are, they are super easy to drive, and they basically drive the way that they look, which is they're just cool. They're just easy to drive. They're just easy going. They're not telling you to speed. In any case, you cannot really speed with those cars because It's a small engine. As I said, it's just like 115 horsepower. So you're not gonna be speeding all that much. Honestly, on the highway, you can still cruise exactly at the right speed. I've been cruising between 70 and 80 miles per hour some of the time, and it worked perfectly. As I said, those cars don't have the same sound insulation as modern cars. So you may hear the engine a little more, you may hear some vibration a little more. All in all, I really think you get used to it. Again, if people get used to driving electric cars with the noise of the seats rubbing, I think you can largely get used to driving a car that has a little more vibration. This is really nothing crazy. And the good thing is that honestly, if you can trace all of those vibration and all of those sounds, you may be able to fix most of them. This is probably my 15th or 16th car. I'm 30-year-old, so I am obviously doomed for the rest of my life. But let me tell you that those cars from the 90s really have something in the end. You know, the funny thing is that back in the 90s and 2000s and then 2010s, those cars were just old school and had absolutely no love. You know, that's how trends are made. Trends keep coming back. Those cars were released at the moment where the design was probably asking for that. But then even mechanically, some of those cars from those years just nailed it. They had an inherent pleasure of driving them. I really personally love that car. I think this is exactly what you need if you are just looking for something simple to operate, something cool, something classy, something a little rare, something that is most likely not going to be losing any kind of value, and something where, I don't know, maybe you want to learn a little bit of mechanic. This is a perfect car for that. Maybe you want to have a car for pleasure driving, maybe do some road trips. This is a great car. There are actually a lot of people using those Volvo station wagon for camping. And I would say that the last thing is that if you are maybe thinking about getting a new car or maybe an electric car because you have some environmental thinking behind it, you should listen to the next few minutes. Now you want to know the best thing about it? Not only it is 35-year-old, it is also 235 miles. Yes, that's a lot. I keep mentioning them, but I am really curious to see if any Tesla will reach 235,000 miles, let alone 200 or even 150,000 miles. Honestly, the car still looks super nice. It drives super well. It is easy. Even the interior is still in super good shape, apart from maybe the driver's seat that has tears in the seats, but even all of the paint on the controls and everything is still there, whereas there are a lot of cars from the 2000s or even later than that that have some faded paint on them. So those cars were superbly built. If you take a look at the inside door panel, those door panels are still in super good shape, apart from maybe the plastic that is a little cracked, but the rest, the leather, the fabric, it got super nice with time actually. And I think this is probably where I want to get to with that car. We have to understand that every year in the US, 12 million cars are being sent to junk. While some of them are being recycled, some others, like probably those kind of Volvos, can still stay on the road with the right maintenance. And I think to some extent it can be a shame to just trash those cars that are still usable to produce some new ones in a way that fast fashion produces more clothing. Again, I'm coming back on them because they are probably one of the most popular brands right now. All of those Teslas, we know very well that they are not well built. At least in a car perspective, they are not well built, and those cars are probably not going to be lasting through time. It is actually said that a third of the pollution from the lifetime of a car is made during its production. So why producing more cars? Whether we want it or not, that environmental argument became more of a marketing tool than an actual matter for car producers. And honestly, countries and even continents incentive that in a way that, in my view, is not really a gift to the planet. For instance, here in California, if you decide to buy an electric car, you may get a rebate up to $7,500. I mean, if you have $7,500 for a car like that, you can keep it on the road for at least 300,000 miles more. Like this is huge. This is huge money. So states and countries should incentive people into maintaining their cars properly rather than trashing them because they know they can buy a new one. We are all some kind of victims of the marketing, but honestly, if there is any environmental argument behind it, maintaining a car like that and allow it to be driven 100, 200,000 more miles is going to make a better gift to the planet than trashing it and buying a Tesla. But anyways, this is just my 2 cents, and I hope you may agree with it. This is also the basis of my channel, God Save the Wheels. By God Save the Wheels, I would say God save those wheels.